Today we're putting our knowledge of MTG Finance to the test by going over our best and worst buys of 2024 and seeing which one of us comes out on top.
I'm Mia, and I don't celebrate New Year's.
I'm BZ. I don't celebrate Groundhog Day. We're the Nitpicking Nerds, sponsored by Card Kingdom. If you celebrate Buy Yourself Some Cards Day, that's every single day on Card Kingdom because there's always great things going on. They've always got great deals over there, and you're going to get the cards at a reasonable time frame, which I think is one of the most important parts of buying cards.
We also used all of the prices from Card Kingdom to make this video. We're also sponsored by Dragon Shield, best sleeves in the multiverse.
Good sleeves.
If you use the code
Nerds
at checkout, you could save 5% of your real money tax dollars on your entire order, which includes some of the most awesome art sleeves I've ever seen.
And we are sponsored by Moxfield, but not yet because we have to bamboozle you. If you knew where the Moxfield ad was going to be, would it really be the Moxfield ad? And we have patrons that we're very thankful for. Thanks to you for being awesome. You helped make this channel possible in the first place. So this video was a long time coming. We have been researching or building up to this for the entire year, from January to now. So what we did during each of our most worth buying episodes, at the end, we had a little bit of a speculation game where every month, each one of us bought 5 copies, 5, not 100,000, 5 of a single card in the hopes that it would go up. We thought that that was a good investment, and we want to add a little bit of stakes. You know, we could have just wrote these down, but I think buying a few of them just makes you motivated to win a little bit more.
Yeah, we are not market movers. We are not just doing a full buyout to hope that they go up to $20,000 for a 5-cent card. No, we are trying to pick cards that we genuinely think would go up. We're going to explain to you why we bought them and learn from some of these wins and losses, and we're going to measure them in 3 categories. One of the categories is overall peak price. What did this card peak at? So you can see what we bought it at and the jump that it really got to at its peak. The price today, the jump from the price we bought it at to what it's valued at today, because some of these are very kind of like turbulent cards, and percentage gained in value. Obviously, it is less impressive if Ristic Study goes from $40 to $50 versus a card that's 10 cents that goes to $50. So we want to judge the percentage that it gained from when we bought it.
Yeah, I think that's an important distinction. Like, how dynamic were the picks, right? If I speculate on a card that's 10 cents and it goes up to $1, I could theoretically have more money to make there, depending on the size of the spec. Ours are all the same size, but theoretically, that's a bigger spec than if you spec on a $10 card and it goes up to $12. Like, how many of those could you really get into versus like 10 cents you can buy 200 for a couple bucks. So we're pretty excited about going over, we love competing for no reason. Also, that's one of our favorite things to do. So we're gonna be battling, and our Card Kingdom price is what we're using. That's what we bought these at, and it's what we're checking all the prices at through our friends over at MTG Stocks. That's just an awesome website. You'll see they sponsor a bunch of our shorts. I think it's a really useful tool if you're going to be monitoring the prices of cards for speculation, perhaps.
We love them, but we are going to get into our first spec. We are going to go from like worst specs to best specs, and mine is up first as one of the worst specs. But I would like to preface that this is a December spec, which means we think that it'll usually go up over time, and it's just like we had 2 weeks to figure out whether this would go up. Mine on December was an offer you can't refuse at $1.79. Blue for an instant, you counter target non-creature spell, its controller creates 2 treasure tokens. Personally, I think that this is an awesome card to begin with. This is a cheap counter spell, and it's so good whether you're playing fast or you're playing a more mid-rangey deck. I really like this, and when it got the reprint, I knew that even if it didn't go up in the 2 weeks that we were going to be actually just judging the game in general, I still wanted 5 copies because I knew I'd be playing it. This peaked at $2.49, which is a 70-cent increase. The price today is $1.29, which is down 50 cents, and the percentage change is negative 27%. But, as I prefaced before, I think that this is more of an overtime spec.
Yeah, and like, if this is your worst spec, you lost 50 cents, but theoretically you could have moved it. We did not move these, by the way, at the peak of every card. Like, we're not that good, but theoretically you could have moved it for a profit. So I don't think this one was that bad. I will also say that, like you said, this was a December spec. We're going to go over the months that we have. In December, we were like, we barely have any time. There's no sets coming out. There's nothing happening. What are we going to do? I guess we'll just pick something from Foundations in the hopes that it'll bottom out and then go back up.
Yeah, also, we would have to know things about like modern and standard, and we don't play those that often. We watch them from afar, so we don't have enough knowledge to actually know what will go up in those formats, and Commander's pretty stable. So, unfortunately, we just picked something that we genuinely liked for December, and mine didn't do as hot as I would have liked in 2 weeks.
We got to go to my worst spec, which I will solidify as the worst spec of the year, because it was just straight up unintelligent. It was not a good decision. My June spec was Lightning Runner, which I bought at $1.49. This is 3 red for a 2/2 double strike haste. When Lightning Runner attacks, you get 2 energy, and then you can pay 8 energy. If you pay, untap all creatures you control, and after this phase, there's an additional combat phase. So what was happening was there was an energy precon that was about to come out from Modern Horizons, and we didn't know anything about it. Or so I thought. I was like, oh, well, then I guess I'll just pick a good energy card. Lightning Runner is a mythic rare. It's a great energy card. You probably will want to put it into the precon. Except it was already in the precon. So I speculated on a card that was about to get reprinted. Don't do that. If you can take any advice from this video, don't buy cards that are about to be reprinted, thus lowering the price with the expectation that they're going to go up. So yeah, this was terrible, and I felt silly after doing it. But the peak was $1.49. That's as high as it ever got. The price today is 99 cents, so I lost 50 cents, and I'm down 33%. It's not so much that the spec didn't work out, it's that it couldn't have worked out, and I just should have done my research.
That's okay. I think the precon was only out a day or two after you had picked this, so, I mean, I think I have to talk about one of my specs later where I did something very similar, but the precon wasn't out when I made my spec versus yours.
Mine just wasn't wrong. It was just the wrong decision. All right, what is your next one? You got July spec next.
My July spec was Spymaster's Vault at $1.79. It's a land that enters tapped unless you control a swamp. If you tap it, you can add black, and if you pay black and tap it, target creature you control connives X, where X is the number of creatures that died this turn. In my opinion, this is the best card for Commander out of all of these lands. Some of the other ones are very good in 1v1 formats. We've seen so much work from the green one and the red one at times, but because this one has such a low opportunity cost and you could just sub it in, especially in mono black decks, black red sacrifice, Orzhov, aristocrats, I think that this had 0 opportunity cost and that people would be wanting to play it a lot. The peak was $1.79 and the price today is $1.49, which is minus 30 cents, which is a minus 16% change. Though I think personally that people are still sleeping on this card if it's this low. I think this card is awesome, and it was one of the sleepers in Modern Horizons 3 because MH3 had so many good cards. Some of them went under the radar, and if it wasn't immediately a banger in Commander where it was like this breaks the format, or if it's not immediately like this should be banned in Modern or it's making waves or whatever, I think that it didn't get enough love, including Spymaster's Vault.
Yeah, so this is crazy. This one I thought would be your soapboxiest card because I was jealous of you for picking this. I was like, oh, that's such a good one. Like, this card is a free roll auto include, and I can't believe that you basically went into the negative for 2 out of the 3 categories, and then obviously the peak just sort of stayed the same. Like, dang, sometimes you just can't predict it. I think Modern Horizons 3 was a highly open set, and a lot of the prices evened out. Like certain things like Ocelot Pride went from 20 to 50, and certain other things, like Ulamog went from 50 to 20, like that sort of thing. But this one I really would have expected to go up, especially since you had from July to December.
Yeah.
It just had to go up 50 cents. I thought that was very likely to happen.
I thought it was too. I don't know why it didn't. If you've played with this card, let us know in the comments why you may or may not think that it went up or something. But I have played with this card, and I genuinely think it's been a very good card.
I would imagine it's in high demand, yeah. So as we mentioned, our specs are only getting better. So now we're going to start getting into the neutral or even green territory as we keep going. And then at the end, we're going to look like geniuses. So just forget everything you heard. My next one was from May, and I bought Assault Intercessor at 59 cents. This is 1 white-black for a 3/2 first strike menace. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, that player loses 2 life. I was like, oh, that's a pretty desirable text box. People love Massacre Worm. People love Vein Ripper. This is like a bulkier version of that. Maybe I can get it on the ground floor. And over time, this was from May, over time it goes up. The peak of this card, it started at 60. It was $1.02, so 43-cent spike. Price today is $1.29, which is 70 cents over what I got it for. And that is a 118% change. 60 cents to $1.30. Hey, that's a pretty dynamic change, if you ask me.
I think so too. I think Warhammer is one of those sets where we won't see a lot of cards from them in a very long time. And I am definitely jealous from some of the Warhammer specs because they are so usable. I've seen you play this in your Marchesa deck, and it is incredibly impactful.
Yeah, I've liked this card a lot. I think that was one of my driving forces behind some of the Warhammer stuff. I was like, when are they going to reprint the Swarm Lord? Or when are they going to reprint Assault Intercessor, the guy in like a robot suit? Like, I don't know. They would have to give it new art for sure. And so when I see stuff like that, I'm like, all right, I don't know. This seems like a pretty reasonable investment. I think a lot of the Warhammer things we did, there are more of them. I think they overall did pretty well. What was your next one?
My next one was in June, and it's Roaring Earth at 39 cents. 1 and a green for an enchantment. Whenever a land you control enters, you put a 1/1 counter on target creature or a vehicle you control. You can also channel it to X green green, discard it. Put X 1/1 counters on target land you control. Becomes a 0/0 green spirit creature with a haste. It's still a land. I picked this for a few reasons. One, because the Ono Queen of Vesuva MH3 Tricky Terrain Precon was coming out at the time. I usually like to try and make my specs around things that are pretty relevant, which I found was very relevant. We've also seen that channel is not interactable, if you want to call it that, but basically it's very hard to interact with the channel ability. So because of that, I just thought that this would be more of an in-demand card because it does stuff at instant speed that people have trouble reacting to because of that channel ability, but it can also be played very cheaply as an enchantment.
Yeah, I think your plan with this card, because it is an uncommon, it's not like this card's going to go up $10, but I think your plan was, hey, maybe this spikes to $1.50 and maybe it settles at $1.
Yeah.
And that would have been really good for you, but it ended up kind of breaking even. The peak was 39 cents, would stay the same. Price today is the same, and the percent change, of course, is 0. So not a bad spec by any means. It's just the same. It just didn't happen. Nothing moved.
Low risk, low reward.
Yeah, low
right
risk,
there.
low reward, baby. You can just bail out of that at 39 cents. My February spec is up next, and I did Kenrith's Transformation at 129. This is also a 1 and a green enchantment, but it's an aura, and when it enters, you draw a card, and the enchanted creature loses all abilities and is a 3/3 elk. I love this card. Super solid removal spell. At the time, it hadn't seen that many reprints, if any. I'm trying to remember. I know it has now, and that's not great for me. But yeah, I thought this was a neat little investment. Not anything I thought was going to go crazy with numbers, but I thought it was an okay place to put some of my money, especially since I'm going to play all the copies. I think I just put them all in decks.
I'm actually surprised that it went up because there were reprints, because the reprints happened after you spec'd on this because it was reprinted in a precon. So I'm very surprised to see that not only did it peak higher than what you bought it for, but today's price is also higher than what you bought it for.
Yeah, it peaked at $2.29, which is a $1 increase. The price today is $2, which is a 71-cent increase. I was stunned. And also the percent change, 55%. We will take it because I feel like that could have gone poorly for me, and I'm happy that the Kenrith's Transformation, it's not like I'm making money. This isn't how I make my living off Kenrith's Transformations, but it's in the green.
It's also been really good to have because I have definitely stolen a few from our collection so I can use it for new decks that I'm building. It's a very useful card. I highly recommend picking it up if you have the chance, especially since we are not in the spec game anymore, so I can say that without bias.
Yes, you can pick up all these cards on cardkingdom.com because that's a very useful website to visit. Now, we got to go to your March spec, which is what?
My March spec is Contaminated Drink at 35 cents. It's X blue, black for an instant. Draw X cards, you get half X counters rounded up. The reason I bought this is because we had a discussion off camera prior to this, and it basically said there were not a lot of X draw spells in the kind of Magic universe that were pretty playable. This is somewhat playable, and it is also from Fallout. Fallout is one of those sets where I don't expect it to get a lot of reprints anytime soon, so I thought it was a very good card to kind of look at and be like, okay, well, everyone loves drawing cards. Red counters aren't that bad. And because of the fact that I don't think it'll get a reprint, it might see increased growth from March to December. Unfortunately, I think one of the drawbacks for this is the fact that it is Dimir, so it's a lot less playable than a lot. Also, people were really angry at rad counters at times.
So, yeah, it's a little confusing, but I think that now correct me if I'm wrong, and I know people like to do that, but if I don't think there is an X color instant that just says draw X cards. I don't think that exists. There's sorceries that do it. There's like pull from tomorrow that makes you discard a card, but this just straight up says X, blue, black, draw X, and then if you pay 8, you draw 8 cards, you get 4 rad counters. That's like an upside, I think, at a certain level where you're starting to mill cards, put cards in your graveyard, fuel your delve or whatever else, and like it basically says if you pay 6 and draw 6 cards, you're going to lose 3 life eventually. But that's way better than losing it right now. And that's also putting cards in your graveyard, lands and non-lands. So I thought it was a pretty good one. It wasn't uncommon, so it basically just stayed the same for you. You had 35 cents price today, 35 cents, percent change, 0. We'll talk to you later when the contaminated drink pays off. But not now.
Okay, I think that maybe this is a hot take, maybe this is an ice cold take. I think it's an ice cold take. I don't think the rarity really matters because it's a Fallout set. All of it was either, there was no real booster pack from it. It was either precons or just collector booster packs. I don't think rarity really played too much of a fact because of the fact that many collector boosters, like not a ton of collector boosters were open, and then if you wanted the precon, you would be getting that, and there were no real other like draft booster packs or set booster packs from it.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Commander precon rarity is like a little weird because how much more rare is a rare from a Commander precon than an uncommon? I don't know. I mean, the thing you want to check is how many decks they're in. If they're only in one deck, it feels about the same, so definitely interesting. I have another precon card from July. I bought Siege Gang Lieutenant at $1.50. This is 3 in a red for a 2/2 at the beginning of combat on your turn. If you have your commander, you get 2 1/1 goblins, and they gain haste. And you can pay 2 and sacrifice a goblin to have this guy deal 1 to any target. That last ability is gravy. This is just a goblin spitter outer nonstop, and I was really happy. I put this card in multiple decks.
Yeah.
I love it. I think it's just a very strong precon only card, which those are the ones that tend to spike, and I think it's very open-ended. All it says is control your commander, whether you're doing backgrounds or partners or just one commander that you're going to have in play for the whole game. It seemed like a solid investment, and it turns out this one went pretty well for me. The peak of Siege Gang was $5.49, which is a $4 increase. The price today, not as bananas. It's $3.49, which is a $2 increase, but percent change, 134. That's like real dollars. If you multiply this out, if I had bought 50 of these, I would be living pretty.
Yeah, no, this was a very good spec. We opened this in MH3, I think.
Yep,
Okay.
MH3 Commander.
Yeah, this was awesome. I've put this in Perfros. I've seen this work in Krenko. It is a very good card, and I'm surprised to see that you bought it at $1.49 because I think we both wanted this card at that time because it was such a. We know the precon cards always go up. We know that MH3 had so many hits. There were just too many good things to choose from in that month.
Yeah, because I think you went Spy Masters and I went Siege Gang, and we were both like,
Yeah, we really were like, I wish I got the other person.
what a good spec. And then, everybody fell asleep on Spy Masters.
They're still asleep, but not on Moxfield, the best place online to build a deck. If you're sleeping on Moxfield, you are wrong. You should be on Moxfield and not on Redacted.
Moxfield will wake you up. It's like 20 cc's of caffeine. Is that a lot?
I don't think
3,000 cc's of caffeine straight into your brain because the UI and the intuitive nature of the website helps you get into the mindset of brewing the best commander deck that you've ever brewed in your entire life.
I don't think caffeine's measured in cc's, but Moxfield really can be if you put your dreams to it.
20 cc's of Moxfield stat for you.
But we're moving on to our next spec. This is my January spec. This is Bessie the Doctor's Roadster at 50 cents. 2 mana for 3/4 with haste. Whenever it attacks, another target legendary creature can't be blocked this turn. It also has crew 2. I picked this because of a few reasons. I think crew 2 is very easy to do. That could just be achieved with a couple tokens that you make on accident. It comes down very cheaply. It hits for a bit. And I was kind of in the mindset of thinking about Voltron commanders personally.
Or like a Joda.
Yeah, something that just hits really hard, really fast, and you want to be able to sneak it in. I understand, though, that with the amount of sweet removal that we have nowadays, it's just like, even though Voltron commanders, might be hexproof or something, or just, might be just indestructible, there are still awesome ways to get rid of them with, like, Blasphemous Edict, or things like Soul Shatter, or Flare of Malice, where they have to sacrifice it. And I feel like Voltron commanders are falling out of favor personally.
Yeah, I think this was a reasonable spec because Doctor Who cards are sort of like not that in demand. They're low demand. And I think that's where you have opportunity where whenever there's a set that nobody cares about, but there's a couple standout cards in it, the price has like a huge chance to spike. I think back to like Jace Vryn's Prodigy and Magic Origins. That was a mythic, but that thing went up to like $80 because it was a tournament staple. But like this could have been a less extreme version of that. And there are examples from Doctor Who we have already of cards that go up because nobody opened Doctor Who.
Yeah, we also think about things like Nissa, Resurgent Animist, or whatever from Aftermath, where it's like, oh, nobody opened this set, and this card is $30 because there's only 6 copies floating around everywhere.
That's what happened to the Surveil lands from Karlov Manor.
Yeah, so I thought that this had the chance because people people are so stubborn with their commanders, and I love it. But, Voltron is a type of commander that people really love, even though it is not as viable in today's kind of just metas because of the removal that we're running nowadays. This peaked at 50 cents, which is what I bought it at. The price today is also 50 cents, so it's 0% change, just even across the board.
We're still not in the red, which is basically in the green.
Gambling logic.
Yeah, next up, I have another Warhammer card. From my March spec, I bought Sicarian Infiltrator at $1.49. This is 2 and a blue for a 1/2 flash with Squad 2. And when it enters, you draw a card. I just love this thing. It's like to me, it feels almost like a better Muldrifter. It's got a lot of the same qualities going on, but it scales better into the late game, and it makes tokens that are copies. So there's other weird stuff you could do with like a Brutaclad or a Populate. And I love Sicarian Infiltrator. And also, it's just a really weird card from a really weird set that's not getting reprinted anytime I can see soon anyway. That was my thought process anyway. And I got pretty paid off by this one. I actually did sell some of these when they shot up. They spiked because of, it wasn't even necessarily Commander.
It was modern, right?
It was a Simulacrum synthesizer, I think. When it says that when a 3-drop enters, you get a card struct, and the tokens from this are still 3-drops, so it just went bananas with that card. Peaked at $12.08, $10.59 jump, and price today is $3.99, so it obviously has fallen, but still $2.50 higher than it was, and it's 167% higher. Big win.
I mean, also, you didn't mention that when it made a construct with Simulacrum synthesizer, they are all artifacts too, which buffed the constructs.
Yeah, it was just even better.
It was just a very good 1-2 punch that when that card came out in big score, everyone just jumped on this. I was very surprised to see this peak because we didn't expect that to happen, obviously, because we don't follow other formats that much. So we were very surprised when it was like, oh, we wake up, it's like, why is this card $10 more than when I bought it?
I was like, we did it. I mean, that's the other thing too, is I think some of these weirdo random precon cards from other sets have a chance to do things in like older formats where they are legal. So, I think, I don't remember if Sicarian Infiltrator was doing things in Legacy or Vintage, but it was one of those two. Yeah, also, these weird precon cards that are only legal in older Eternal formats have a chance to just do things in those formats. So I think if you choose wisely in terms of like, Sicarian Infiltrator is one of those cards that has potential. Something random came out that we never could have expected, but because I think I chose a reasonable card with reasonable potential that I got rewarded for it.
Yeah, I think that whenever I think of these, I think of commander-based cards, and I'm trying not to think too much of other formats, mostly because when we are not market movers, as we mentioned earlier. When I try to spec out a card, I also try to think, will I play this card? So I can just grab it from the bin and go, I saved $10 on you because I bought you at 50 cents and not at $10.
That's where half of these specs went. They went into our binders or our collection. And when we realized the price went up later, we're like, cool, I just saved money. I already have the card in my deck. That's where half of them went. Some of them we actually did get to move, and that was cool. But a lot of this is for bragging rights.
Yeah, like the next one that I put into a lot of our decks is Unexplained Absence at $1.29. 3 and a white for an instant. For each player, exile up to one target non-land permanent that player controls. For each permanent exiled this way, its controller cloaks the top card of their library. This is a precon-only card. It is in white, which loves to remove things, but has trouble, I feel like, removing multiple things at once at times, especially with the flexibility of exiling and non-land permanents. So there's a lot of the generous gifts, the Stroke of Midnights and stuff, but being able to exile a bunch of stuff that isn't creatures and in this multiplayer, especially your own, if the One Ring is killing you and stuff, I thought this is an awesome card, and we've played it in multiple of our decks, and it's been amazing. I don't think that hitting multiple people's stuff is really that big of a deal because it doesn't make you arch enemy. People might grumble a little, might smack you a little, but I think getting 3 threats off the board is really going to be the difference between you winning and you losing versus one, playing 3 mana, destroy 1 thing versus 4 mana, destroy 3+ things.
I don't think there is any question in my mind that this card is very strong. This is a great card, but this is a weird set of stats that we scooped up with this card. Why don't you let these stats rip because they're weird.
Okay, this is $1.29 when I bought it. I just want to preface that. The peak was $10, which is $8.71 at its highest. The price today is 59 cents, which is 70 cents lower than what I bought it for. So the percentage change today is minus 54%. I thought this was very weird. I do admit that I may have spiked it a little bit when I first talked about it because I'm like, this card is awesome. I'm going to put it in all of my decks. And I did. Don't get me wrong. This wasn't for the game. game. I genuinely like this card. We have liked both of these cards, and we have put them in a lot of decks. And I saw it spiked to like $3, $4. I think that would be a perfectly reasonable place for this card to settle. And I understand that it fell a little bit, but to fall to 59 cents but also peak at $10, I think is a wild graph, and I don't know how it got there.
It's so weird. Now, as a reminder, we are grading all 3 categories individually, so this is bangers for Mia's peak category, but of course it's not pulling any weight in the price today and the percentage change categories. What a weird, what happened? I know that I thought that you spiked it up to $4. Yeah. But I don't remember it $10, but the math never lies. Let's go to my January, my first spec of the year. It was Master of Dark Rites. I bought it at $2.49. This is black for a 1/1. Tap, sack a creature to make 3 black mana, but only to cast vampires, clerics, or demons. I thought this is one of the best vampire drops you could ever have early, and I was thinking, because you play it all the time, I was thinking, Edgar Markov, this card is better than Soul Ring on turn 1 in Edgar Markov. So I was thinking, this looks like a great thing. It's pre-con only. No one's going to be able to get as many of these as they want. There seems likely that it's going to go up. Looks like a vampire staple.
Yeah, this has been amazing in that deck. Overall, we just love a good Black Lotus impersonator. And people are like, well, it doesn't give the vampire. Well, Edgar does, and that's where you're going to be playing it. Because Edgar's going to refund you that vampire, and you're going to get 3 mana on the next turn. I have played 5 drops on turn 2 very easily with this card, and it's scary every single time.
Yeah, playing a 5-drop on turn 2 in Edgar Markov requires Edgar Markov in your command zone, 100% of games, playing Master of Dark Rites on turn 1, and then playing a 5-drop. That's it. That's all you need to do. It's very simple, and it crushes people. It's very, very strong. This peaked at $5.99. So that's a $3.50 difference. I'm happy about that. The price today is $5.49, so it's a $3 bump, and the percent change was 120%. So I think I cleaned up on this one. This was a nice, easy. I think we probably still have them. I can probably sell them for money if I want to, but whatever. It was a nice, clean game.
Yeah, no, this is an awesome card. I really love it, and I'm happy that we had multiple in our little, tucked away drawer so I can steal one for myself. My next spec is in April, and it's Jory N. Ruin Diver at 49 cents. 1 blue-red for a 2/3. Whenever you cast your second spell, each turn you draw a card. The reason I spec'd on this is because OTJ pre-cons were coming out, and I saw Stella Lee, which cared about how many cards you drew per turn.
Oh, right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I feel like this might have been, I could be wrong. I feel like someone said this was reprinted in that pre-con too, but if it was reprinted after, or it was released after I made this choice.
See, I don't remember.
I don't think so though, because of these numbers.
Yeah, because this was a surprising number. I thought, oh man, that's a bulk rare. That's not going to do anything, but we'll hit him with the numbers.
Yeah, I bought this at 49 cents, and the peak was $1.29, that's an 80-cent increase. The price today is 79 cents, which is a 30-cent increase, which is a 61% change. Overall, I mean, you buy it low, you have it, just go up in value a little bit, but that is big when you're buying so low and you're just buying these penny stocks of cards.
Yeah, I was surprised. I was like, cool, that's a win for you. Happy. We take those W's. Those W's. I really thought that was going nowhere. I thought that was going to be one of your worst specs. I don't know. I've had Contaminated Drink, Spymaster's Vault, and Unexplained Absence in my head before we crunch these numbers as W's.
I thought so too.
When you made them. And I had this one as an L for you, and it was like everything is unpredictable.
I mean, it's no lightning runner, but we take what we can get.
All right, I'm starting to get some momentum here because my October spec, which is fairly recently, was Archdruid's Charm. I bought it at $5.99. So this was like a heavier investment. This card's great though. Green for an instant. Choose one. Search your library for a creature or land. Put it onto the battlefield tapped if it's a land. Otherwise, put it into your hand. Then shuffle. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. It deals damage equal to its power. Target creature you don't control, or exile target artifact, or exile target enchantment. So many words. I thought this is a busted Magic card. I was like, what is going on? Automatic include staple in so many decks. And as we were getting around to the end of the year, we have less time to let the market, like with Bessie, you had 11 months for that. It's like slow burn. Maybe a commander comes out in the next million years.
Yes.
But for me, I'm like, I think I just need to invest in a good card that I know is worth its price and kind of like a most worth buying sort of thing, and I'm like, I'll just follow my own advice.
Yeah,
and I think this is a great move.
Yeah, a card that you can play anywhere, like your 10 Carador decks or something.
Yeah,
and
or Field of the Dead.
Yeah, it's a really good card overall. And I'm just surprised that you didn't buy it in our January spec, because I know you said something along the lines of like, I want to do something that would move immediately, but you identified this as a very good card even in January. So my question is, why didn't you pick it up then? I feel like it was even cheaper back then. You bought it at $6 here, but I feel like even then it was like $4 or $5, like before it caught on. I feel like it was cheaper.
So I do remember this. I don't remember exact numbers, but I remember seeing this card and going, if this card is like not reasonably priced, if this is a good deal for me, I'm going to buy 20 of them because I'm going to play 15 of them, and then we'll have 5 on standby for you or just sell or whatever. And like, then I can make all the money I spent on the 20 of them. But like, when I checked, it was not a card. I was like, oh man, it was like $9 or something.
Okay.
And it was like
it was
too
high
much.
pricing.
I was never going to like speculate on that. That's too much money for me. So it ended up trickling down, and then I caught it $3 less. And I'm like, you know what? I think it could go back up, and then it ended up going back up. It's peaked at $9.49, which is a $3.50 increase, and that's the price today. So presumably it's going to go up even further, $3.50, and it's a 58% gain. Of course, when we're dealing with the higher prices, I got $4 out of it, but that's only 58% because I didn't choose a card that was like super dynamic. If this thing went up to 20, then we're talking.
I'll be keeping an eye on these as the years kind of go on, because I will be curious about this. I don't know if we're going to be continuing this game overall, but this is a very good card, and it's really good to see where we started, how far it's going, and kind of like the trends of Magic cards overall.
Yeah, I think it's cool because it sort of puts some data behind like, does any of what we're saying make sense? Like, we're actually investing in this, so we're putting our money where our mouth is, and I haven't felt bad about almost any of these.
Yeah, I haven't either, because I still think that they're very playable, and if the right card comes out, these can definitely spike in the future. I'm not worried about any of these being reprinted into the ground.
Yeah, Archsteward's Charm is this is a great card.
It's a good card.
It's not going anywhere.
Even if it fell to $3, that wouldn't make it a
I'd buy more.
bad card.
I would
Yeah, right?
just buy more of them.
So I'm not worried about any of these. My spec for May was Calamity of the Titans at 99 cents. For colorless for a sorcery, as an additional cost to cast a spell, you reveal a colorless creature card from your hand. Exile each creature in Planeswalker with mana value less than the revealed card's mana value. I chose this because of the Eldrazi precon that came out in MH3. I think that Eldrazi are very beloved, as we all know, and because of the fact that there are not a ton of board wipes in colorless. We have All Is Dust, but this was one of the only cards that was kind of a precon only card from Commander Masters when Eldrazi came out, so I thought that this would have some flexibility there. And I was right. At the peak, this peaked at $12.99, which is a $12 increase. The price today is $2.29, which is The price today is $2.29, which is a $1.30 increase. Not bad, considering the hype has died down. And the percent change is a 131% increase.
Yeah, there are certain creature types that are just movers. They move cards for price, and I have picked a different creature type later in the thing down the line. But I think Eldrazi is definitely one of them. Like, whenever Eldrazi come out, the Eldrazi stuff that exists just goes up almost across the board. Some of the bulk rares and stuff aren't going to move, but this was a perfect example of like, yeah, it was kind of a bulk rare, but because it was in a precon, there's not enough copies. So when the wave of demand floods in, this card cannot meet that, versus like, I don't know, Drowner of Hope isn't going anywhere.
Yeah, and because of the fact that with the commander of that precon that came out, everything was devoid, even though you could play all the colors. So all of them were colorless creatures, which made this a very sweet include into there. So I am pretty happy with this one, even though it has fallen a bit today.
Yeah, still a solid W. We're gonna move to one of my specs. This was the November spec, so we had to move it. We had to really figure out what was going on. Hexplate Wallbreaker is what I bought at $1.49. There's so many words on this thing. 3 red for an equipment. It comes with a 2/2. It auto attaches. It gets +2/+2, and you can equip for 3 in red. When the equip creature attacks, if it's your first combat, you get an extra combat. Then you untap the stuff, and that's pretty cool. It's just like an equipment version of the spell you've seen 100 times, and I thought that was interesting. But the reason that I spec'd on this, and we'll get to a spec that you made very similarly, Captain America. The Marvel Secret Lair was coming out. These were huge releases, and we knew without a doubt that some of these Marvel commanders were going to move cards. It was a little bit of a crapshoot as to like, what were they going to be? I figured Wolverine wasn't going to be that intense, and Black Panther wasn't going to move a ton of cards. They're still cool decks, but they didn't scream like build around me the way that Captain America's like, I'm going to throw equipment at things. So this was my move. I was like, this is a cheap equipment. There's not enough copies if there's a huge demand spike. And I'd say it worked out pretty well because the peak of this card was $5.99, $4.50. The price today is $5.49, which is a $4 gain. And the percent change, 268%. That's my biggest percent change.
Personally, I thought this was a great one. I didn't even consider this card because I feel like a lot of people slept on the 4 Mirrodin things to begin with. Personally, I slept on the 4 Mirrodin things anyways, but this was a really good one. Captain America was a card that was very well loved, and scooping at $1.49 felt really good.
Yeah, he ended up moving a ton of stuff. This was a great W. And this one, unlike Security Infiltrator, where I was like, I think this is a good card, and Legacy's like, it's busted now for 5 minutes, and I went, oh, okay. This was like, I called my shot. It went up exactly for the reason I said, so it felt like it was a nice validating experience. And we'll get to your validating experience, which is next.
This is my November spec. This is Embercleave at $8.49. 4 red for an equipment with flash, but it costs 1 less to cast for each attacking creature you control. When it enters, attach it to target creature you control, gets +1/+1, double strike, and trample, and you can equip it for 3. I thought that this had synergy with multiple commanders in the Marvel universe, I guess. Captain America, it is a high equip cost, or Captain America, this has a high casting cost, but it can be reduced, so when he throws it, it does a lot of damage. For Storm, this can actually help her get double strike, so you can get multiple Storm triggers and that sort.
And it's really good.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. For Storm, you can get double strike, so you can get multiple Storm triggers. And with Wolverine, I feel like one of his things is that he needs trample, and sometimes it's hard to get that commander damage in. So I felt like this had a good stake with a bunch of the commanders from Marvel.
Yeah, I think pretty much all of them. Even Iron Man could search for Embercleave, I think. So you hit literally 4 out of 5. Black Panther just can't play it. And I think that was pretty good. And this ended up working out for you, even though this is one of the highest value specs initially. Like, the investment was $8.50. So this could have gone horribly if for some reason Embercleave was reprinted, but it did not go horribly for you.
Yeah, it actually peaked at $10.99, which is a $2.50 an increase. The price today was $10.99, which is the same increase, and the percent change is 29%. I thought this was going to go a little bit worse because of the special guest reprint in Foundations, so I thought that maybe that would hurt the value a little bit because it was so close to when I spec'd versus when it got printed, and I was not cognizant of that, which I was a little sad about, but it still went up, and I'm very happy to see that.
Yeah, I don't think special guests move the needle too much. I think maybe if it's like a $50 card, it will. But I don't think because this was 10 or under, I don't think that it was common enough to see special guests in Foundations that it impacted the price too much. Maybe it would have been 12, instead of 11 today. But I think you did a really nice job, and we both pretty much called our shot with the Marvel thing. If there's some kind of big colossal set coming out, you better believe some of these cards are going to be market movers, to quote the finance bros.
Yeah, this has been a really fun game to play overall, not to derail because we do have more cards than some of our best buys of the year, but this has been a really fun game overall to play. I think it has made me think about cards in a different way because we do love saying most worth buying, but being able to think of it as most worth buying and also most worth keeping an eye on because this can actually move the market very, and kind of swing in a lot of different ways that I never thought of is just a different way of thinking about cards.
Yeah, I think it's fun to sort of shoot your shot, and it's basically the most toned down version of gambling, right? Where you're just
it's a stock market, right?
Right. You just play on the stocks with some friends, and we had a couple other friends join in on this spec game. It was just a lot of fun, and it was very low stakes. So I also like that. We're not trying to change the world.
We're trying to change 5 cards.
We're trying to, 5 cards again is the number of cards that we bought of these. So there's no funny business. All right, next we got to get to September, which was a great month for both of us.
Yes.
I will talk about my spec first, which was Swarmyard Massacre at $4.49. 3 black for a sorcery, you get 2 squirrels. Then each creature that isn't an insect, rat, spider, or squirrel gets -1/-1 until end of turn for each creature you control that is one of those types. Here we go. This I pegged as, from the squirrel precon, another type that people just lose their minds for. In this case, I was picking squirrels, but this is also the Swarmyard types, so it lumps in all the rest of them, and that's just a bonus. But I know players lose their minds when squirrel cards come out, and I was like, even at $4.50, I think this thing has a chance to double.
Yeah, I'm surprised because you bought it at its kind of peak when Bloomburrow came out, so I thought that it would roughly stay about the same. I did not expect this to go up so much, but then also when you think about the Swarmyard types, people lose their minds over rats too. It's not just squirrels. And then with the insect commanders, there's a couple like Fumulus or something that have come out in Foundations, I think there's been even more support that have wanted this card.
Yeah, I think this was a sweet one. I think it was a little risky, like you said, because this, I think, was a good spec if I had 2 years. But I could have totally imagined in September, this card comes out in August or whatever, and then just drops down to $2 before eventually coming up to 10. But no, I was rewarded pretty quickly. The peak was $8.49. That's a $4 gain. Price today, that's the same. We're at an all-time high, baby. $4, and the percent change is 89%. So I'm very happy. The spider players and the rats and the squirrel players, they swooped in right away, scooped up all of these, and I'm $20 richer. But not really, because I played at least one of these.
Yeah, it's like, you definitely played this, so I don't want to hear it. You love your spiders.
Stonks, baby.
My September spec was Great Unclean One at $1.79. This is 4 in the black for a 4/5. At the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses 2 life. Then for each opponent who has less life, then you create a 1/3 black demon creature called Plague Bearer of Nurgle. This is another Warhammer card. We went hard with the Warhammer cards.
I think they were all good moves.
This was. I also bought this, not just, shot in the dark, but because this was in relation to the Endless Punishment precon that came out in Duskmourn. Everyone loves a good group slug precon, especially since there weren't that many to begin with, because this is like our first or second one. So when it came out, people went crazy for it. I know it was our least liked one in terms of playability right out of the box, but everyone loved Lord of Pain and Valgavoth. So because of that, I figured that this would be a good card to spec on, because there's not a lot of group slug like payoffs to begin with, especially ones that are not easily reprinted like Great Unclean One.
Yeah, that was such a good move. I think this was one of your highest IQ specs, because there was almost no way this could have failed. I think when we made this spec, when you made this one, the commander had been spoiled and nothing else for that precon. And you just look at, like, nothing pays off group slug. There's no payoffs for that other than just, hey, you did damage. This is actually like, hey, put me in the group slug deck. And let me tell you right now, I'm sure that you knew with 100% certainty that Great Unclean One, who makes Plague Bearer of Nurgles from Warhammer 40,000, is not going to be in the Valgavoth deck. So that was such a sick one, and it paid off for you.
Yeah, the peak was $6.13, which is a $4.34 increase. The price today is $5.99, $4.20 increase. We're still up there. And the percent change is 234%. I'm pretty happy to see that.
I think that's your biggest one. I mean, well-deserved. Good, intelligent decision that paid off.
Yes. Your next one, I'm very surprised to see it spike so much in the last 2 weeks. Yeah. Like, what happened there?
I don't know if this is someone looking out for me, but in our December specs, like we said, we had to make an emergency call, and yours didn't end up working out with Offer You Can't Refuse. But I was like, I don't know. Authority of the Console seems low. It was $3.99 when I bought it in December. It is white for an enchantment. Creatures your opponents control enter tapped, and then whenever they enter, you gain a life. Such an annoying card.
Yes.
A card that we had watched creep up in price for years to like $25. And we were like, that's ridiculously high. But now that this is reprinted, I think it'll creep up to half that or something over time. The only question was, will it do that before we collect the data for this video so I can actually get credit for it? And it did a little bit. It peaked at $8.99, which is a $5 jump. The price today is $7.99, which is a $4 jump, and that's an even 100% change. I was surprised, not only because of the time frame, not because of this card going up. I knew for sure this card was going to go up. It was just a question of when.
Yeah, it was really the time frame that did it for me, because everyone's opening Foundations right now, and Foundations is one of those sets that is going to be open for the next 5 years, maybe even longer if WotC really wants us to. So I was surprised to see it jump this much because of the fact that there are so many more copies in circulation now. It's not like this is a precon only card, or it's only in the collector boosters. No, this is just in regular Foundations packs.
Just in the set. I was definitely surprised that it just worked out, I mean, let's go to your October one.
Yeah, this was also another one where I thought that you'd need to pick this up immediately because it was so low. It was Tendershoot Dryad at $4.99. 4 and a green for a 2/2 with Ascend. At the beginning of your each upkeep, you create a 1/1 green Sapperling token, and Sapperlings get +2/+2 if you have the City's Blessing, which is very easy to get because it also includes lands. I picked this because I remember buying this card for $15 or $20 for Galadriel, and that was very expensive. So to see this reprinted in a precon at $5, I knew I had to jump on this immediately. It's a great card, and it is an army in a can. It goes so fast, and it's less than like Wolverine Riders in terms of mana. So
was this tricky terrain?
Yeah, I think no. I feel like this was something.
Was it the Zimone deck?
Yeah, I think this was the Zimone deck, because this is October, so this seems like Duskmourn territory.
Right. Yeah. Whichever one. I think it was that one. As soon as it came out, you're like, this is now down to this price. Maybe it'll go lower. I don't care because I know it'll go higher.
Yeah, this is a great card. This goes so fast. And the fact that everything gets buffed, you'll already have 8 power by the time you play this and go around turn if you have that City's Blessing. And then, or not, it's more than 8 power because I was counting those as a 2/2. It'll be 12 power if you have the City's Blessing and it survives all the way back around to your turn. That's amazing. And if it can survive any longer, or if you have Saproling synergies, this is an awesome card. And the peak was $10.99, which is a $6 increase. The price today is $9.49, $4.50 increase, and the percent change was 90%. This is a great card.
Just good numbers all around. That was a nice one to be on the lookout for a reprint because it was a card people were super, super wanting to play. Next up, we're going to go to April. It's my last Warhammer card. I swear it's Keeper of Secrets. I bought it at $4.99. This is 5 in a red for a 6/4 with first strike haste. And when you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, it deals that much damage equal to its mana value to target opponent. Payoff for Cast from Exile, Madness, Cascade, whatever. I think it's a very broad text, even though it is like a little niche. There's a couple different decks that want this thing. Now, the reason I picked up this card is actually different from any other spec. This card already spiked, and it was on its way down from that. Some commander came out, I don't remember what it was, but it spiked this card up to 20 or something, $20. And I was like, okay, I don't want to buy it at that price. Noticed a year later or whatever, down to $5. I was like, I think that's just going to keep happening. Yeah. And I think every time it does, it'll drop down to a price that's higher than the initial starting price it was before. So I think this card easily, I was thinking big. I was thinking in 5 years, this could be a $50 card. I don't know when I'm going to see this again. So I scooped it up at 5, and it peaked at $10.28 after April, and that is a $5.29 increase. Price today, $9.49, which is $4.50 increase, and the percent change, 90%.
I am not surprised to see this going up. We saw this with Passionate Archaeologists, where it was just sky high for so long. I think it still might be very sky high, but seeing this at $5 was very surprising because we've seen so much value from it. I've seen it in your Cascade deck. It hurts very hard.
That was another example, I think, that informed this decision was the Passionate Archaeologist. It was bulk chaff trash, and now it's like $12 or $13. And I was like, people just love payoffs for casting from exile, but not the Doctor Who ones because nobody opened that set, I guess.
Yeah, no, but this was a very good spec overall. This is one of the best ones that we've seen so far.
I think we are actually about to get into each of our very best spec. Time for a victory lap because we nailed these. What was your first one? Actually, there's a lot to talk about with this one.
Oh my gosh.
Highs and lows.
There were so many highs and lows, and all of them happened in our house. The August one for me was Opalescence at $12.99. 2 white for an enchantment. Each other non-aura enchantment is a creature in addition to its other types and has base power and base toughness equal to its mana value. I really wanted to do this because of Duskmourn, because there were the things that said, if this is not an enchantment, bring it back, or if this is a creature, bring it back as an enchantment, but this makes it as a creature, so it'll just die and it'll still be a creature. It'll come back as an enchantment, but it'll still be a creature. So you can get infinite like death triggers if you have a sack outlet and something to ping and such. And this was also on the reserve list, so getting it at $13, this was my most expensive spec of the year. I thought it would be good because it's not like these can be reprinted. But if you guys knew or didn't know, I don't know, we went away for a couple of days. Miso and Amber knocked some water on only our Opalescences somehow. That's absolutely crazy. And water damaged all of them.
Yeah, we bought 5 Opalescences at $13. Left them in a spec pile. They were on the bottom of the pile. Someone spilled water on the table. One of the cats. We know it was one of them. And yeah, they ruined it. Shout outs to Whatnot. Some of the people out there did some meme auctions. We like stamped the Opalescences with the cat paw prints because they already ruined them. And we auctioned a few of them off. So like we didn't, don't worry about us financially. This didn't ruin us.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys.
Very frustrating. Also, another low with this card. You talked about us getting super hyped because we're like, they go infinite with Enduring. Yeah. No, they don't.
Yes.
I don't think that was something we could have intuited, but they just don't.
Yes.
So we kind of were wrong about that. I guess I wanted to at least say this because we have said that in the past they go infinite. They just don't. They don't do that. I think it's like layers or stamps or some nonsense. But talk about the numbers because the numbers are great.
We're here to talk about the numbers, people. The peak was $34.99, which is a $22 increase. The price today is $23.79, which is a $10.80 increase and an 83% increase overall, because this is reserve list to begin with, and I feel like there also have been a lot of enchantment stuff running around to begin with this year. There have been so many cool payoffs and stuff, so I think that not only with Duskmourn coming out, just overall the enchantments in there might have been a very cool payoff for this.
I think reserve list cards are just great investments in terms of like, hey, if you want to buy them and keep them aside, buy 5 copies, Keep them aside for your commander deck. Don't ruin a reserve list card forever because you want to buy 10,000 of them. But Opalescence, like, I'm going to need that card at some point for a deck. I think we still have a beat up one sitting around because we're going to play it in something. The poor little guy is so rippled and distorted. But yeah, we're doing our part, destroying Magic cards so that the reserve list gets smaller. At least our cats are.
Yeah, Miso and Amber are criminals. Please remember
They
that.
are absolute criminals. Do not trust them if they ask for anything. But it's time for my best spec of the year, which was my August spec. We did great with this one, boys. Nesting Dovehawk at $6.79. Big investment, but it paid off, obviously, because this is the best one. 3 and white for a 2/2 flying at the beginning of combat on your turn. Populate, and whenever a creature token enters, you put a +1/+1 counter on this thing. I invested in this, big air quotes, because of the Zinnia Precon. I thought that Precon was awesome. We got to play test with it early, actually, so it was super sweet. I was like, wait a minute. Making unique tokens with unique qualities that you want to populate, this card was already expensive. I didn't even think it was a cheap spec, but I was like, I think this could be huge. So I'm going to take that risk. It peaked at $27.99, which is a $21.21 increase. Price today, it has fallen from grace a little, but it's $17.99. It's $11.20 higher. And the percent change was 164%.
I am surprised to see that this is your best spec of the year. I thought Sicarian Infiltrator was going to be your best spec of the year, just like kind of in a vacuum, but this went up so much. Zinnia was an awesome precon overall. We all know that. We played with it, and it won 3 out of the 4 games when we played all of the precons against each other. It's so cool. We've seen it do work in your cube, and we've seen just decks in the wild. It's so much fun to populate stuff.
Yeah, populate is a really cool, underrepresented mechanic, and this was this is probably the best card that says populate on it. So I thought the stars aligned perfectly. It wasn't prohibitively expensive. I would have bought this at anything under 10. Scoop up 5 copies, and then it was just a great move. I think I sold like 3 of these, and it just paid for like every spec I made for the whole year.
Yeah, you got really lucky with this one. The percentage change of 164%, even at that high price of almost $7. Pretty wild.
Yeah, it was not the biggest peak gain. That was your Opalescence at $22, but mine was like right up there. But it does bring us to, that's all 12 months. We're going to give you our stats average for the year, announce our winner. They will claim infinite bragging rights. The final stats, we have Mia. Her average peak dollar change was $4.75. So you're like well in the green on that.
Yeah, I'm very happy to say that I am in the green. I feel like my biggest flaw this year was the fact that a lot of mine stayed the same.
You had a couple that just sort of like, I am never going to move and I'm a pillar of the universe. The price today, your average increase, which was good, there was an increase, $1.84, because it could have been, if you were bad at this, it would be negative. It's not like all the numbers would be positive. You did good enough to swing it into the positive, and your average percentage change was 44%. We're going to go into my stats. My average peak plus dollar amount was $5.21. I think I just eked you out there. Price today, my plus was averaging $3.30. So I did beat you there. And percentage change, apparently average for me was a plus 110%. So I'm taking home the bragging rights. No monetary value. Did I mention we share a Magic collection?
Yeah, I'm very excited to be playing all of the specs that we both chose for this. But if you want to see any more wrap-up videos, we actually have one ranking every single precon of the year right here.